Have you ever gone into a full-blown panic when you lose your cell service at some random intersection? Or gotten completely lost in the giant maze of a Walmart parking lot? Take away Google Maps or an Uber to the airport, and our modern sense of direction is basically zero. We are living in a ridiculously spoiled era. But let's rewind a few tens of thousands of years. No compasses, no satellites, no shiny highway signs pointing you to Route 66. Our ancestors got tossed right into the middle of the most brutal ice ages of the Pleistocene epoch, and with absolutely nothing but their bare hands and bare feet, they pulled off the greatest road trip in history, just casually strolling out of Africa and taking over the entire planet. First off, let's burst that romantic bubble for a second. Our ancestors weren't throwing on backpacks, lacing up their shoes, and telling each other, "Hey man, let's go on a road trip to find ourselves." There was zero wanderlust involved here. The greatest human migration in history basically boiled down to the most primal survival instinct ever: follow the food. Think of prehistoric megafauna, like woolly mammoths or giant herds of reindeer stretching for miles, as nature's mobile food trucks. When your favorite BBQ truck rolls out, you gotta move with it. The crazy part? The secret to this epic journey isn't carved into some cave wall, it's actually hiding right inside their teeth. Science tells us that every single fossilized tooth from our ancestors is basically a black box. Every time they took a bite of food or drank water in a new territory, nature quietly stamped a permanent chemical signature onto their tooth enamel. And when we crack open these black boxes, we don't just get a bunch of boring data. They tell a wildly vivid story of these relentless humans, constantly hot on the heels of megafauna herds, pushing through valley after valley, plain after plain, with absolutely no finish line. But wait, there's more. Mother Nature has never exactly been a gentle mom. The Earth's climate back then was constantly throwing some incredibly brutal curveballs. A massive drought could literally bake an entire savanna, or a giant glacier could just suddenly slide down and swallow a whole valley for the winter. Our ancestors weren't exactly packing their bags and chasing the horizon by choice. They were basically being shoved forward by an unforgiving environment. Every step they took wasn't a casual stroll. It was a high-stakes race against starvation and the sheer fury of the planet itself. Today, hitting 10,000 steps on your Apple Watch or finishing a Thanksgiving 5K turkey trot is a big enough flex to brag about on Instagram for a whole week. But for our ancestors, walking 25 miles a day was basically just a warm-up. Flashback to tens of thousands of years ago, a mega drought sweeps through the valley, turning the savanna into an absolute frying pan. Every water source dries up. The only option is to migrate to a delta hundreds of miles away, crossing a deadly, shade-free wasteland. The Great Migration begins. Panicked herds of massive beasts just bolt for it. But nature plays fair. The ones who sprint the fastest are the first to drop. Even with their long strides and jacked muscles, these fur-covered tanks literally cook from the inside out after just a few exhausting miles. They're forced to stop, panting desperately under the scorching sun before permanently collapsing in the hot sand. Right in the middle of this deadly scene, there are these tiny human figures just trudging along. They aren't sprinting, they're just walking. Strip away the expensive, high-tech sneakers, and you'll realize the human foot is an absolute biomechanical miracle. The arch of your foot and that massive Achilles tendon aren't just muscle tissue. They're basically the suspension and spring system of an off-road supercar. Every time a barefoot smacks down on the baked earth, this spring absorbs the shock, stores the energy, and instantly snaps back, launching them forward. No rushing, no wasted effort. They're constantly recycling energy with every single step, locking into an endless, relentless rhythm like a pendulum, just coldly eating up mile after deadly mile. But being a pro walker isn't enough to survive the sun's oven. When the temperature crosses a limit, our second ultimate defense system kicks in: liquid cooling. While the animals around them are completely overheating and breaking down, humans fire up millions of sweat glands across their bare skin. That sticky, gross sweat you hate so much in the summer? Back then, it formed an invisible armor of heat dissipation. It constantly evaporates, pulling the heat straight out of the blood and cooling the entire body down in real time. They don't even need to stop for shade. They literally turn the desert heat into fuel for their own cooling system. And just like that, day after day, leaving behind the carcasses of those explosive, fast-sprinting beasts, those stubborn human figures finally set foot in the promised land. The conquest of Earth never belonged to the fastest runners. The greatest passport in human history was written by the most incredibly stubborn walkers to ever live. Having insane stamina is one thing, but how did our ancestors trek across entire continents without just wandering straight into a death trap? These prehistoric hunters were basically living, breathing GPS systems. The second they stepped into unknown territory, their brains automatically hit record. Wherever they looked, their minds were instantly logging the wind direction, the way a shadow dropped across a cliff face, or the exact shape of a dried up riverbed, basically auto-generating a fully detailed 3D map right in their heads. And they weren't just looking down. Out in a massive wasteland with absolutely zero landmarks, the brilliant night sky was their ultimate compass. The constellation basically acted as eternal lighthouses, guiding their every step. Then, when darkness swallowed the hunting grounds, huddled around a crackling fire, that life or death map was finally brought to life. No paper, no ink. All that raw data the hunter collected was woven straight into mythology. These were the Songlines. Every single survival clue, from an underground spring hiding in the sand, to a dead coral reef, to the exact path of the stars overhead, was transformed into the spirits of nature within the legends of the Dreamtime. Every mountain and every stream now had its own specific melody. To survive the ultimate desert crossing, you didn't need to stare down at a piece of paper. You just had to walk tall and sing the exact right song of your tribe. The absolute greatest map in human history wasn't drawn with straight lines. It was carved out of sound and built on melodies, echoing forever through the whispers around a campfire. Have you ever been stuck at your desk, surrounded by a concrete jungle, when suddenly this overwhelming urge hits you right in the chest? The need to just ditch everything and escape into the wild? That rush of absolute freedom filling your lungs as you hike through an ancient forest? Or that pure, raw craving when you are staring down an endless dirt road? That isn't just some impulsive whim or a random social media travel trend. That is the echo of tens of thousands of years of evolution pulsing directly through your DNA. It's your internal biological engine revving up, reminding you of the exact primal purpose it was built for. Our ancestors didn't need to leave behind epic paper maps because the real map has always been there. It's hardwired into that relentless spring system under your feet, the spatial compass inside your brain, and those guiding songs echoing from the dawn of humanity. The greatest road trip in human history never actually ended. It's just waiting for you to take the next step. So if you had the choice, is there a spot on Earth that makes you want to awaken this primal instinct and step out to explore it for yourself? Drop your dream coordinates down in the comments below. And don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so we can keep decoding the greatest mysteries of our world together.